gentlemen, welcome to the Holy Joe Rock and Roll Show, live and unscripted.
Hey everybody, welcome. This is Holy Joe Rock and Roll coming at you live and unscripted. It's Friday, April the 12th, 2019. Now, one of my followers sent me a link to this Breitbart article from March 16th, 2019. So basically almost a month ago, it was stuck in my suspected spam folder on YouTube. It was a YouTube comment from Mr. Thomas out there. Okay, Mr. Thomas, thank you for this. And I read this, and you know, in light of the so-called attack on Muslims in, was it Christchurch, New Zealand, which blew up and was everywhere, there's been no, I haven't heard about this until I got that email or that message, excuse me, on LinkedIn from Mr. Thomas. So this is what's happening, is that there is a religious war been happening for a long time in Nigeria. Now, a lot of people don't realize that Nigeria has got a lot of people. I think it's got like 200 million people. Around half are Muslim. The other half are Christians, mostly Roman Catholic or Catholic. I guess there are some pagans, or whatever idolatry type people there, but for the most part it's split between Muslim and Christian in Nigeria. And this has not been reported. It's not been reported. Have you heard about this? And has anybody heard about this? Let me just open up the chat real quick. Pop out the chat. Pop out the chat. And this is, like I said, this is the first that I've heard of this when I got this message from Thomas. Yeah, the mass media is completely silent on this. And it just shows you the political agenda. This is from Breitbart. And they state that the recent death toll of Christians in Nigeria has reached 120, with this week's slaughter of more than 50 by Fanali Muslim militants in the Kaduna state of Nigeria, the Christian Post reported. These people are saying that these Fulani jihadists have become a greater threat than Boko Haram. And just the atrocities here. Look, it's one thing for a guy to come into a mosque with a weapon and start shooting people. As horrible as that is, which it is horrible, at least if people in the mosque are armed, they can shoot back. And, you know, instead of taking away the guns, the sobbing New Zealand Prime Minister, female Prime Minister, is she childless? I'm gonna guess she's childless. Decided to take away the guns, ban guns, right? Yeah, this is being called a Christian genocide that's happening in Nigeria. Over 2,000 Christians were killed last year alone. Thousands of Christians, sorry, yeah, thousands of Christians, doesn't say 2,000. Thousands of Christians were killed in Nigeria in 2018 alone, okay? And many are calling it a Christian genocide in Nigeria's Middle Belt, okay? There's also a quote here saying that from the bishop, the Anglican bishop, yeah, a lot of them are Anglican, so that's a Protestant, but it's, I guess, if they're conservative, they are aligned with the Roman Catholic Church, because I think their Anglican split because the British Anglicans decided to accept sodomy and women ministers, whereas the traditional Anglican said, you know, hell to the no, and decided to come back to the Catholic Church. Anglican Church, by the way, is nothing more than the Catholic Church in England, headed by the King instead of the Pope. Okay, it was nothing more than a looting operation and a way for King Henry VIII to get his divorce. All right, so that's that. But anyway, I digress. The Anglican bishop in Nigeria, Dr. Benjamin Argak Kawash said that the Muslim Fanali militants represent the #1 terrorist threat facing Christians in Nigeria. He goes on to say, quote, the government is able to provide protection for the Christians, but what's obvious to everybody, is that the government is unwilling. So this is a huge problem. Now, when I Googled this, because, again, I didn't see this anywhere, so I Googled 120 people killed in Nigeria, and, of course, Snopes comes up. Snopes, is it true? Is it true? Oh, news reports in the aftermath of the Christchurch, New Zealand massacre present a woeful, incomplete description of a complicated conflict. Really? Dan McQuill? Dan McQuill says it's a complicated conflict, right? Because why? Because Muslims are the persecutors and Christians are the victims. Suddenly it becomes a complicated conflict. So what Snopes says is that that the information is mixture of true. What do you mean? It's either true or it's false. Did 120 Christians get killed by Muslims? Yes or no? What they're saying in Snopes is that it's not a religious conflict. It's herders who happen to be Muslims, because we know how they love their goats, and farmers who happen to be Christians. How did that work out? You got to be pretty smart to be a farmer. A herder, all you need is some grass, and you need a plate and water for your animals, right? But a farmer needs to prepare. I mean, think about it. So, is there a question about intelligence here? Why don't these goat herders start farming, buy some land? So, what Snopes is trying to say is that this is not a religious war. It's Muslim goat herders versus Christian farmers, and that's what look. It doesn't matter. It breaks down to Muslims versus Christians. Whether you want to hide behind goat herders and farmers. That's insane that Snopes would say that. And then they're trying to say that, yes, it's true that thousands of Christians did die in 2018, but there was some kind of an attack. Christians retaliated, and there was some violence against Muslims as well. Well, that's not what the story's about. Okay, because the mainstream media totally omitted this story. So what Snopes is saying is that the Breitbart article is half true because it admitted some other facts. Well, the mainstream media does that all the time. It's called lying by omission. Here's the same story from the MetroVoiceNews.com, and it looks like it's pretty much the same story as Breitbart. I don't know if it's a cut and paste or what, but I mean, what I wanted to say is, what the Muslims are doing, it's just ruthless. Going basically into villages. They said that there was 3 groups of these Muslims. One group would go in and start shooting up the houses. The people would flee the houses. The second group would torch the houses or burn them down. And then the third group would go after the families that were trying to escape, killing them as they tried to flee. So this is obviously an orchestrated, organized gang of Muslims killing Christians. And there's been nothing. I mean, I haven't heard of this from anybody. The truth about the Muslim killings in Nigeria didn't come out by Stefan Molyneux. So I guess Stefan, he's got a lot of things on his plate, like polishing his bald head. But that's neither here nor there. I digress. But, even Stefan, I would expect him to say something. But, okay, he's an atheist, so maybe he doesn't really care. But I digress. And here's another article here. This is from the Christian Broadcasting Network. This looks like an original article, and they also report this. But these are not mainstream media outlets. These are not, as far as I know, with the exception of possibly Breitbart, which many people say is Jewish-controlled. These other organizations probably are not. But Breitbart had the information, so maybe it serves their agenda, trying to paint Muslims as being bad. So there may be that. But the truth is the truth. The news is the news. Why is this not being reported, especially in light of all the coverage that the Christchurch attack got? So I wanted to make sure that this story got out there, that people heard about it, people saw it, and that I'm pretty much sure, it looks like I'm out front on this. I didn't find any videos on this on YouTube. Probably this video will be demonetized. So, I mean, if you'd like to support this channel, certainly you can hit me up. The information is down below. paypal.me/HJRR for Holy Joe Rock and Roll. For a one-time tip, throw a tip in the tip jar. I really appreciate that. You can also buy my music on holyjoe.bandcamp.com. 6 albums there. Got some great music out there. And you can see the progression over the years of 6 albums, 6 CDs, all CD quality music out there. That would be a big help. But share this information. That's really going to be critical. Share this information with your people, your friends, your family. Let them know what's going on. I have some Nigerian friends I went to medical school with. They were awesome dudes. They were awesome dudes. I honestly, at first, I didn't know what their religious affiliation was. I didn't really care, but I was curious, and I asked. I said, "Are you guys Muslim?" You know, and they said, "No, we're Christian. We're Catholic." And that really, I was surprised. I was, because I didn't know. I just was just pure ignorance on my part, not knowing. And they were smart guys. They were hardworking, smart guys. They were American. They were Nigerians that came to America. They assimilated. They spoke correct English. They were educated. Again, this is a thing that guys like Vox Day continue to say that, these people, these third world people, won't assimilate. And I think this may be the exception that proves the rule. I may be wrong, but they said the same thing about the Irish. They said the same thing about the Italians. They said the same thing about the Jews. Well, maybe 2 out of 3 ain't bad, baby, right? But the people that come to America, they tend to assimilate to a certain degree. Now, if there's too many people and they form their own little communities and they isolate themselves, then they're not going to assimilate. As we see in some places, possibly in Michigan, where now they have enough people to get their own congresspeople in. I'm not saying it's good or bad. They want to be represented by people who look like them or people who have their same values, and there's nothing wrong with that. E. Michael Jones goes into this in his book called The Slaughter of Cities. Urban Renewal as, the subtitle was Urban Renewal as something like that, genocide or something like that. But essentially in the book Slaughter of Cities, and you can watch his videos online where he talks about it on YouTube, E. Michael Jones. Basically they brought up sharecroppers from the South into Catholic communities, essentially. There would be Polish Catholic, German Catholic, whatever, these parishes, to break up these communities, Irish Catholic, break them up, send them to the suburbs. And that's where this whole concept of white came from, white people. You move to the suburbs, you stop going to your local church, you're no longer Irish Catholic, you're just a white guy in the suburbs, right? You're no longer Polish Catholic, you're just a white guy in the suburbs. You drive to work, you eat your TV dinner, you watch TV, you lost touch with your community. So you can see just the opposite happening in places like Dearborn, Michigan, where Muslims are congregating in such large numbers that they're able to elect their own representative. That's what Catholic power was in the peak of Catholic power, you would say, probably is 1962 with the election of John F. Kennedy, who was assassinated, I believe, by #NoMoreWarsForIsrael, by the Jews, because of 2 things. One, JFK issued silver security notes, basically paper money issued by the Treasury Department backed by U.S. silver certificates. That I had to piss off the Jews who control the Federal Reserve, the banks. And number 2, he was not wanting Israel to get the nuclear bomb. And obviously they had a secret facilities in the desert in Israel. They were doing it, working with French companies. Of course, the French are always trying to F over the United States, even after they were our allies to help us get rid of the British. And we know that they stole nuclear triggers from the United States. I mean, these guys are supposed to be so smart, right? But they had to steal the technology. Same with the Chinese, same with the Russians. Jews, American Jews, gave the Russians nuclear technology. They couldn't figure it out. You see what I'm saying? So there is something to say about this bullshit. But yeah, so getting back to the point, you know, there's nothing wrong with, if you live in a community and you want to elect your own representatives, there's nothing wrong with that. And it's sort of too early to know what's going to happen with these two Muslim women elected officials. They are calling out the Jews. They are calling out the Benjamins. There's been a lot of reaction to that, but the reaction proves the comment that Congress is controlled by Israeli money, right? Talk about Russian meddling in our elections. It's Israeli meddling in our elections. Not to say that we don't meddle in Israeli elections. I mean, Barack tried to unseat Bibi Netanyahu when he ran the previous time. He just got reelected like 2 days ago for a 4th or 5th term as prime minister, and that's what's going on. So the bottom line is, this type of information is not being reported. It's not been reported by the mainstream media anywhere. I didn't hear it on the radio, TV. Well, I don't watch TV, but I didn't see anything pop up in my news feed or anything like that. And this is just since February, right? And this article was written March 19th. So I'm a month after this. I still haven't seen anything in the mainstream media or on, you know, any of the Fox News, CBS, ABC, CNN, nothing. So it obviously shows the real agenda. It is to destroy Western Christian societies, and if there's any perpetration of violence against Muslims or Jews, it's all over the news. But if there's violence against Christians, nobody cares. Nobody talks about it in the media. There's no information, not even mentioning it. I'm not even talking about wall-to-wall coverage, you know, with what we get with the other people. Nothing. So think about that, and support your Christian brothers and sisters. That's all I can say. Hopefully this stuff gets cleared up, but it's horrible. Horrible tragedy. Fighting over land because these Muslims can't buy land. They can't buy their own land to raise their goats on. They're semi-nomadic peoples. You know, this is a problem. And there may be a question of IQ here. That's all I'm saying. So this has been Holy Joe Rock and Roll, coming at you live and unscripted. Yeah, real quick, just looking in the chat real quick here. The West is going through a major phase. Hopefully it doesn't go hot. Hopefully it doesn't go hot, but there's no way to know. There's no way to know. I mean, I go through... Look, I'm very an optimistic person. I think that there may be a way to alleviate this, to avert us going hot. But, and I'm certainly not calling for any kind of violence or going hot. That's not the point. The point is, how do you, when you can discuss this, discuss it, talk about it, a lot of times that is, you could raise the issue so that it can be solved, so the issue can be addressed, right? Just like with immigration, we're tired of illegals coming into our country, destroying working class jobs. It hurts the minority community the most. It hurts blacks and Hispanics who tend to be doing lower income jobs. It hurts white kids too, quote unquote white people who used to do these jobs. I mean, it's just such nonsense to say that they're doing jobs that Americans won't do. This is freaking nonsense. I mean, I bagged groceries when I was a kid. I did construction when I was younger. I never delivered newspapers, but I know all the people who delivered newspapers were white kids wherever I lived in the United States. So these are jobs that cutting grass. I cut grass for a while. Everybody I knew who was doing grass cutting was white white people. Now it's all Hispanics, all illegals, pretty much. So before I sold my house in New York, I couldn't get anybody to cut my grass except for an illegal guy. I mean, I wasn't there. I wasn't there. I was in Poland, and I had to maintain it, and the tenants wouldn't do it. So I found a guy who would do it, cut my lawn for $30, and every like 2 weeks, I'd give him a call, and he'd cut the grass, and I'd mail him a check. And then he disappeared. I don't know if he got deported or what, but the last check that I sent, he never cashed. So, anyway, that's a side story. I just don't know why I got on that tangent. But, yeah, I mean, look, land use is an important issue no matter where you are. Land usage and sharing of land and land rights. But if you're a nomadic people herding goats, I mean, that's why many people believe that this is why Egypt and most of the Middle East became a desert, is because with the rise of Islam, these Islamic Muslim goat herders, they come from a goat herding background. They're not farmers. Whereas Rome and the Christians people, because all of North Africa, which is now Muslim, was Christian, including the Coptic Christians of Egypt, all of what's known as the Levant, so modern-day Israel, Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, this was all Christian, right? And they're farmers. But when the Muslims came through, they don't want to farm anymore. It's easier to just have some goats. So anyway, these goats and sheep overgrazed, and there may have been a dry spell. And when you overgraze in a dry spell, you kill the grass, and it doesn't come back. So, there may have been, who knows, there may have been a 5-year drought or whatever, where there was minimal rain, and that may have perpetrated the biggest drought. Because we know from history, for example, the Romans had roads. All roads lead to Rome. And the Romans would build the roads, and they would plant olive trees in North Africa. And the people who owned the land, their job was to maintain the roads. And if they maintained the roads, they got to keep the harvest of the olives. That was the deal. Think about it. What a sweet deal, right? That's a sweet deal. And that is what kept the roads in shape and kept the locals. They basically were farmers. It was a fair exchange, barter system. But when the Muslims came through, they chopped down the trees to make fires to cook their goats. And the goats and sheep ate all the grass, turned into a desert. So hashtag Islam sucks balls. Another example. But before I leave, once again, hashtag no more wars for Israel. Let's remember that. Netanyahu is continuing to talk up possible wars with Iran. With Iran. And he's been doing this for 20 years, man. He's talking the same nonsense that he did with Iraq, talking about weapons of mass destruction, threat to the Jewish people. I don't give a F. Deal with it. You just got the Golan Heights annexed to you. I don't understand what Trump is doing. I'm still a supporter of President Trump, but I'm not on the Golan Heights annexing bandwagon. That is a farce. 2010, I'm repeating myself, I said this in another video. In 2010, there were secret negotiations between Israel and Syria in the Land for Peace plan that was the plan all along, supposedly. Just like Israel gave up the Sinai Peninsula to Egypt and made peace with Egypt, Land for Peace. So the plan was to give back the Golan Heights to Syria, and Syria would normalize relations with Israel just like Egypt did, and there would be no more conflict. But by 2011, the Jews had backed out of the deal. By 2015, they discovered natural gas and oil on the Golan Heights. So that's why they're not going to give it back. That's why. There's no reason for Israel to be occupying the Golan Heights. Okay? If you make peace with Syria, there's not going to be a security risk. End of story. You could even make it a demilitarized zone. have UN troops, you know, monitoring, perhaps. So it's all nonsense, and I think that part may be escalating. I think we got to really keep an eye out for in Trump's second term, if the rhetoric starts ramping up with war with Iran, we need to really speak out against that, okay? Because, oh, by the way, something new that came to mind. Remember how there was no talk about the neocons being Jews pushing the war with Iraq because of Israeli interest. The only organized opposition to the Iraqi war was the no blood for oil bullshit. And I think, looking back now, that was a psyop. There had to be a psyop to distract people from who was behind the Iraq war. Okay, the war in Iraq. Had nothing to do with 9/11, because Saddam Hussein had nothing to do with 9/11. Okay? And he had no weapons of mass destruction. It was all a lie. It was all a big lie. We know that now. Yeah. Michael Jones talked about it quite a bit, yeah. So keep your eyes open, and if you hear the rhetoric start to fire up from Netanyahu and even Trump about Iran, just start calling your Congress people, say, listen, we're not going to go to war with Iran. I'm not sending my sons to the military. I'm not volunteering. I will not support the war. And if there's a no blood for oil, obviously there's no blood for oil. That's nonsense. It was a psyop to distract people from the real perpetrators, the people who were really pushing the war in Iraq, which is obviously, as we see, a waste of trillions of dollars, tens of thousands of wounded American soldiers, tens of thousands more, with PSTD, committing suicide, with no limbs, no arms, no legs. For what? We accomplished nothing there. And in the cunning of reason, by taking out Saddam Hussein, the only force capable of stopping the Iranians, now the Iranians are more powerful than ever and more influential than ever. Now, Trump did say that before the war. He said that if you take out Saddam, you're going to make Iran the hegemonic power. Trump did say that. So that's why I think there is hope for Trump, unless he's been totally taken over. I don't know. With the Mueller investigation over, there's hope for Donald Trump to do the right thing in his second term, which I believe he will win. We'll see what happens. I was going to say in a landslide, but if he keeps pulling stupid shit like this, the base is not going to be excited. He's got to keep the base excited so they come out like they did in 2016 to re-elect him in a landslide. I mean, I think there's a lot more people that maybe weren't political, that economically are doing better, like have jobs. Those people will probably vote to keep it going, keep the good times going, keep the economy going. So he's got that for him. I mean, there's a lot of people who did vote for him who also are economically doing better. With steel mills opening up and oil pipelines, and the United States is the #1 producer and exporter now of natural gas and oil. Complete turnaround from peak oil, right? Peak oil and global warming and all this nonsense. All nonsense. All nonsense. Proven to be nonsense. So thanks for hanging with me, people. It's been Holy Joe Rock and Roll. I'm coming at you live and unscripted, reminding you to always make it happen for the captain. And if you see bullshit out there, you see some shit out there, call it out. Just call it out, man. All right? Remember to always make it happen for the captain, because you're the captain. Thanks for watching. This has been Holy Joe Rock and Roll, coming at you live and unscripted. If you're new to this channel and you got this far, thank you, and hit that subscribe button, thumb it up, and comment. What are your thoughts on the murder of over 120 Christians in the last few weeks? Reported 16th of March 2019, a month ago, and there's been no, I repeat, no mainstream media coverage of this atrocity. Remember to always make it happen for the captain, because you're the captain.